So I thought I would go live today because I was recording some content just here in this lovely garden cafe called Gom Garden Cafe here in Da Nang, Vietnam. And then some music started up nearby. And so I figured it's not the ideal location for pre-recorded content, but might be a lovely place to go live and speak to you guys in a more immediate fashion. I like this back and forth, hearing what you guys are up to. So curious whether anybody will come on today, see what everybody's up to. But just enjoying this garden cafe, some iced tea, which is always provided free of charge, which is a little lovely. No matter basically no matter what you order, you always get tea here in Vietnam. It's a certain type of tea. I'll be honest, I don't even know what kind of tea it is. Yeah, beats me, but it's pretty good. We've got sound, you probably can't hear it, but we've got the sound of frogs ribbiting. It's a pond nearby. Maybe I can show you that. Well, you can't actually see it, but under there's a pond. But it's a lovely environment. It's always interesting because when I come to record content, when I'm not recording content, I have a lot of ideas. Excuse me. Excuse me. When I am not recording content, when I'm thinking about recording content, when I am browsing social media for ideas, there's always lots of ideas. I always think of some fantastic things that I think would be really helpful. Hello, Nanoka. And yet, when it comes to actually sitting down and recording them, all of the ideas are gone. Hello. Oof. So yeah, I was just saying, I'm here in Gom Garden Cafe. This is a beautiful cafe here in Da Nang, Vietnam, and I thought I'd go live just instead of recording some pre-recorded content for my Instagram and YouTube. I thought I'd go live and have a bit of back and forth. So I'd love to hear what is on your guys' minds at the moment. What are you currently working on? What are you excited about? What are you struggling with? I thought it'd be kind of cool to have more of an interactive session here, a bit of back and forth. Maybe you've got some questions you'd like to know, some things you'd like to know about me, or just some feedback or an advice on stuff that you've got going on. I've got I know there's a lot of people out there at the moment in a lot of pain and suffering from loss of direction in their life, depression, not knowing how to get out of a certain state that they're in. And what I really love to do and what I help people do is to change how they're thinking and feeling, and change it ultimately through doing so. Change how they're showing up for themselves in their lives. Changing some of those underlying beliefs, that identity. Actually, maybe that's a good place to start, seeing as nobody's asking any questions here, is that if you're somebody who struggles to stick to a habit, or maybe you procrastinate a lot, you get really stuck in your own head, and that stops you from doing anything. You kind of get overwhelmed essentially by your own thoughts, anxiety, fears, trying to map out a clear pathway forward, and you're struggling to actually do something that produces the result. Maybe you don't even know what that result is, what direction you're heading in life. One of the most powerful things that you can spend some attention, or spend some time and energy learning about and trying for yourself, is first starting out by questioning and figuring out what your beliefs are at the moment. What are the stories, those stories that you repeatedly tell yourself that are usually unconscious? This is the tricky bit. We all have these stories, these repeated thought patterns that we have in our minds that we tell ourselves, and they keep us locked into a certain way of being, a certain identity, right? And if you're struggling to, if you're procrastinating, for example, it might be part of you that actually sees yourself as a procrastinator. That part of one of the stories, one of the thoughts that you keep telling yourself is, I'm a procrastinator. I really struggle to take action. I need to have things mapped out clearly before I can take the first step. There are a whole bunch of these stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, and that reinforces a certain identity within us. It reinforces an idea of who we are, the kind of person that we show up as. And so even when we are consciously saying, well, I want to start a business, or I want to get fit and healthy, that repeated subconscious thought pattern in your mind inevitably will keep you stuck, because behavior follows identity. You have to change how your self-belief, you change how your self-perception, your identity. And when you start to see yourself as somebody, for example, maybe you see the people that go to the gym all the time, they see themselves as a fit person, as somebody who is just, that's who they are. It's part of them. Like, I'm just somebody who goes to the gym regularly. I'm somebody who works out. I look after my health. And when you get that on a subconscious level, not just a conscious, like, oh, this is something that I think I should be, but rather that's a fundamental belief of who you are and how you show up, then you'll naturally start to take those actions that you at the moment are trying to force yourself to take. And I kind of laugh at people, that a lot of online gurus and stuff saying that, oh, you just have to be more disciplined. You have to be more disciplined. Well, telling somebody who isn't disciplined to be more disciplined is like telling somebody who's struggling or who's drowning that they should just learn to swim a bit better. It's like, it's not very helpful in that moment. Yeah, you get it, and yeah, that's fantastic. So one of the really core elements of making any sort of positive change in your life is to work on the identity level. What is my occupation? I'm a mindset coach for entrepreneurs, so I help people really to change how they're thinking and feeling internally on an unconscious, subconscious level. Because when you get that right, then naturally the results, the actions follow. So if you're somebody, for example, that is really struggling to feel joy in your life at the moment, maybe you're somebody who's stuck in a dark place, you are procrastinating, you're avoiding social interactions, that sort of thing. Maybe you're struggling in your relationship as a result. Then I'm the kind of person who would come and help to change that. So, for example, that can look, that can take many different forms. For example, I worked with a guy who was struggling to sell, right? He was struggling to put forward what his value, his offer to people, because he felt at an unconscious level that it was selfish of him to offer his services to people. It was selfish of him to ask for money in exchange for his value. And through working with me, he was able to come to a new realization. The difference is not just a cognitive one where I tell you what you should think, because if I tell you what you should think, it won't sink in, right? You won't actually accept it as a new idea. So what needs to happen is through a process of investigation, of questioning, of a guided conversation, he was able to come to this new realization for himself that actually that not providing and not offering his services to somebody that he knew he could help, that was selfish. It was selfish of him not to offer a solution to somebody's pain. And I think that so often this is the kind of change that people can experience, and that the kinds of problems that people get stuck on is because we approach life through our filter, through our thoughts, right? But if we haven't trained our mind to filter correctly, if we haven't trained our thoughts to be properly programmed, then we are kneecapping ourselves all the time. And so something as simple as a conversation can change and if it's done in the right way, it can change how we actually show up. So in this case, he was able to immediately after, in the week after, he messaged me a few days later. He was like, he made his first sale, or first couple of sales, and he felt so confident in his own value following on from that session that he was able to, I think he quadrupled the cost of his offer that he was helping people for this service that he was providing. And so often we get, am I married? I'll get to that in a sec. We don't get in life what we deserve or what we want. We get out of life what we ask for, and we get out of life, life is a reflection of who we are, of our self-perception, of our identity. Am I married? I am married. Sorry, I'm not married, I'm engaged. I'm engaged, and I've been with the same partner for going on 11 years. In fact, we just celebrated our 11 years of knowing each other just a week ago or so. And it's been, I've been in multiple relationships with the same person. Basically, we've been through many ups and downs. We've broken apart or split up several times, come back together, and each time we came back together, we came back into the relationship as different people, and because of that, we came into the relationship, into a different relationship each time. But yeah, a big part of what I help people with as well is the way that we not only relate to ourselves, because that's a really important relationship that most of the time we don't actually place any importance on or energy, spend any time working on, but also how we relate to the people around us, how we relate to our partners. Because I've experienced what happens when you get it wrong. I did all of the wrong things in the first. I did some right things as well, but I did a lot of wrong things in the beginning, in the first several years of my relationship, and that, I've learned what happens when you do things wrong, and I've learned what happens when you do things right, and I've experienced the difference between the two, and I can tell you the place that I help people from is a place of experience in terms of wanting to help people avoid the same pain that I was in, because it's not nice. It's not a good place to be. That's wonderful, Gary. That's so cool. I wonder, what do you say God has blessed you more than you deserve. I wonder, what is it that what part of you do you feel is deserving of what you have received? Because I bet there's part of you that has absolutely been deserving of the blessings that you've received, and that the fortune that you have to be married for 33 years is not an easy task. And so no doubt there have been many things that you've done wrong, but I'm sure that there have been many things that you've done right. I wonder what has been, I don't know, perhaps you've got a lesson in there. What's your number one piece of advice for someone in a relationship to be able to have that same amount of longevity and success in their relationship as you have? And I also want to, it's so interesting that people can be so successful in one domain. So this is what I've experienced a lot with the people that I work with. They are financially quite successful, and they have a lot of the external success, where people would look from the outside and think, wow, that person, they're doing really well. They've kind of ticked all the boxes. And yet when you speak to them and they open up and they trust you enough to give you an insight into their real experience, you realize just how much they're in pain, just how much they're suffering, because they have external success, but that often has come it's come as a result of either avoiding something. So a lot of people work towards really great external success because they're afraid or are trying to avoid that feeling of inadequacy. Or they get success and then they don't know what to do. And this is a big part of I think also what so many people struggle with is that having a purpose. We're in a meaning crisis, I think, in the Western world at least, where people are lost because they don't understand or they don't have a clear idea of why they're here. What is it that they're working so hard for? What is the point in putting up with the pain in life? Because they don't have that purpose. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. We pray about all major decisions before we act. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things, whether it's God or the universe or some form of higher power. It can be very powerful, very freeing even to have something that is greater than yourself. We all need to have something greater than ourselves, and because it allows us to let go of a lot of our burdens, our fears, sometimes the things that we're struggling with, our pain. We can let go of it because we can see ourselves in relationship to something greater. But those people that don't have something that is greater than themselves, tend to suffer more than those that do. And one of the things, because I'm not a particularly religious person in the sense of a particular doctrine, but something that I have found incredibly useful, having gone through my own very painful experiences, has been to put myself in relation to something higher, because then it's not all on you. If you're the kind of the top of the pyramid, so to speak, then everything is on you, and there's nothing to. It's just, I don't know how to put it in words right now, but it's a challenging place to be. Success has scared me often, but saw us through every hardship. Beautiful. Well, and that's right. When you can, it's developing that sense of faith in something, right? And having faith in something literally means you can't know it. You have to believe something without the same sort of evidence that we would otherwise rely on in our normal physical world and existence. But being able to have faith that no matter what hardship you're going through, you are on the path, and you are that things will work out. That is a religious idea, right? Follow the truth, follow the path, aim up, and you will experience success. You will experience joy, love. You will experience your life in the way that it needs to be experienced as a result of that faith, and that can be really useful. I think even for people that are not religious, being able to see it as something that is very useful and very powerful can be the impetus to get over our desire for logical, rational, tangible evidence. So it's very, very useful, and I think, very powerful. Also, just for that purpose, the purpose of becoming successful in whatever way you determine or define success. Because you've got to have a direction. I was talking about this in a piece of content that I was just filming, which is we experience the way that our mind works and the way that our biology works is that we experience positive emotion in relationship to the goal that we're aiming at. So if you have a goal that is meaningful to you, and you're heading in the right direction, you'll experience dopamine, you'll experience positive emotion. And if you veer off course and you go somewhere else, then you will start to feel anxious, and you'll start to feel negative emotion, because emotions are they're a communication device, they're a correction device that tell us when we are heading in the wrong direction. And they sort of like shunt us back into onto the path towards our goals. And I think it's a great way of thinking about emotions, because then when you're not feeling good, when you're feeling anxious, you can recognize that as the signal of like, oh, I need to do something different here, and make the appropriate correction. What's this? Beck Dennington. I'm not religious. I can see value in it, but I struggle with the concepts myself. Yeah, I get it, man. I have the same, and certainly had the same challenges myself, and that's why my own definition or my own concept, I suppose, is not religious in the sense of an organized religion, but rather there is something greater than ourselves. There's energy. There is some sort of universal intelligence. There's something out there that is greater than ourselves, and it's an unknowing. It's an unknowing, but to have faith that, yeah, I suppose it's more of a spiritual practice than a religious practice. But I think it's also the ego's desire to protect itself that keeps us from accepting or adopting a spiritual or religious mindset, I think, because there's part of us that doesn't want to be fooled, I suppose. But if you can see it rather as being something that is very useful to you rather than something that is true or false in the kind of practical sense, then that might help you to start to see the world in that way. And by doing so, you benefit immensely, because it gives you this, yeah, it's almost like it's safety in a way, but it's yeah, it's just this like understanding of, oh, I'm a piece of the puzzle. I'm here to experience life, and pain is not something to be avoided, but something that is part of the experience. And there's all these different concepts and stories that we can tell ourselves that are much more useful to us than life is purely biological and chemical and physical, right? Because we are not the thought. We are the one observing the thought, and we still don't understand where consciousness comes from or what consciousness is. So I think just having a bit of an open mind towards that could be really useful as well. You've witnessed miracles and it changed your life years ago. It made me a Christian. We are all God's creation, but we become children of God. Yeah, I think everybody has different ways of defining it. But I think the idea that I think it would be foolish to believe that there is nothing greater than what we can physically touch or hold on to. The fact that religious and spiritual practices have been established throughout the eternity, throughout all of human existence, tells me anyway that there is something of value there. And it's only in our modern, what would you call it? So it's only this sort of modern take where we think, oh, there's nothing more than what we can measure. And I think that's a very cynical and not very useful perspective to take. And I think the people that do have that sort of very atheist viewpoint often struggle with your mental health, your emotional well-being, struggle to sort of see the point, right? Struggle to see the point in life. And if that's the result, then it's not a particularly good belief to have, in my view, because I focus more on, and this is what I help people with as well, or encourage people to do, which is think more in terms of what is useful to you. And by useful, I mean what is the outcome that you want, the result that you want, and then what beliefs do you need to adopt, what thoughts do you need to adopt, what ways of thinking and feeling do you need to have in order to get you closer to that result. And if, for example, believing that there's nothing more than what we can measure is actually helping you to feel good and safe and move you forward in life, then by all means feel that way. But if it's not, and I do believe that a lot of people struggle because they don't have something that is more of like more higher power or universal intelligence, something greater than themselves, then if you don't have that and you're struggling, then that might be one place to look, right? It might be something to ask yourself, to question whether is your current belief system serving you, or is there something better or something that would be more useful, more beneficial for you. So, any other questions? I'd love to get you guys' inputs, and got any questions or comments? do think it's a lot about pride for sure, and I find value in religion. It helps give people a moral compass and a purpose. Yeah. That's to be honest, that's kind of what changed for me when I started to become more open to spirituality and just open to the idea of, and the power in religion and spirituality was when I ended up in a very, very dark place as a result of not having, or doing a lot of different things wrong, but not having something like that. And it was a sort of a death of the ego, dissolution of the ego experience that allowed, or that opened me up to that idea of, okay, maybe there's more to me and more to this existence and this experience than I have been aware of up until this point. And by doing so, that really did help me. And maybe it will help you as well if you're in a place that's challenging right now. But we do need to sort of let go of the ego, I think, in part, in order to be at least open-minded to it. So let's see, just read these comments. And yeah, I mean, the moral compass, it's kind of interesting, actually. There's this point, I think, that Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about, which is like even the scientific endeavor is a religious practice, because in order for scientists to operate, they need to believe in truth, in an absolute truth, or a truth above all else, and that in and of itself is in fact a religious practice. But he does a much better job of describing that and communicating that than I ever could. Hi, Carly. Hi, Carly is a very good what? Watched a man lift an automobile off a pedestrian by himself. He could have walked away, but said the Lord led him to that intersection. It's done me. That's cool experience. There are a lot of I suppose at the end of the day, we are meaning-making machines, human beings. We operate in terms of stories, and this is why I'm a mindset coach, essentially, because it's all about all our behaviors, the way that we experience life is through the stories that we tell ourselves, through the thoughts that we have, right? And in cases like that, you found that you witnessed that event and you told yourself a certain story about what that means, and that meaning has given you real power and guidance in your life. And so that's a fantastic thing to be able to tell yourself to experience and to move forward with. What's this other one? But for me, I struggle with the idea of an abstract deity, so I think I prefer a more universal. Yeah. I'm the same, to be honest. I think that for me personally, I think everybody's welcome to their own beliefs and opinions, and I would encourage anyone to adopt the belief structure that works best for them, as long as it's not negatively impacting somebody else. But I prefer the idea of universal intelligence, sort of a spiritual energy. I mean, we know, like, this is something that we do know. We know that we're all energy. We know this. Matter is just a lower vibration of energy, and so the idea that, well, if we're all energy, everything that's physical is in fact energy, then adopting more of a belief structure around energy being and some sort of universal intelligence is easier for me to adopt as well, but each to their own, right? I think that I'm not personally a believer in I think what happens is, because we're human, we try to encapsulate and describe events and things in terms of what we can understand and conceptualize. So it makes sense that we would take concepts or ideas or some idea of what consciousness is and put it into a deity, right? Into a god. But the god, this idea of a god, is just a representation of the ideas. It's not a physical thing, but we confuse it, or some people confuse a deity, a god, as somebody in the sky, or something physical, but it's not. It's just that we've kind of tried to encapsulate these ideas and this unknown into something that we can kind of conceptualize in our minds, and that's it's important not to confuse the concept with the encapsulation, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. I'm on the border of my own conceptual understanding. This is not my expertise at all. So many stories are lost when people don't sit down and just talk to parents and grandparents and learn from their experience. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, yeah. That's actually the case a lot of the time with a lot of our traditions. If you think about the things that have been around for so long, that we lose sight of why they were there in the first place. And then we have the ignorance to think that they have no value just because we don't understand the value of them anymore, right? And I think there is a level of humility that we need to have of recognizing that things that have been around for a long, long time are probably there for a reason. There's probably a purpose to them, even if we don't know what that purpose is. There's a use to them. And we should be very careful about getting rid of things that we don't yet fully understand. That's what I'd say. Just because we don't know why something exists is not a reason to get rid of it, because we can get rid of very powerful traditions, stories, institutions, things like that, simply out of ignorance. And then we suffer as a consequence afterwards. And it takes us a long time to recognize that we're suffering because we didn't understand why it was there in the first place. By the way, I just want to show you this. This is great. I'm in this garden cafe here in Vietnam, and they give you free tea, iced tea. I don't know what kind of tea it is, but today they even gave me a little, well, not a little, it's quite a big teapot with it as well. So usually you just get a glass or a cup, and they actually gave me a whole teapot, which was really lovely. Part of the problem is too much focus on the deity, which leads people to be separate instead of sharing ideas. Yeah. We start arguing over the wrong thing. This is actually something we do all the time. If you've ever been in a relationship, and I think Gary, you can probably relate to this. With your wife, you get into an argument, and after a while, you realize that you're not arguing about the thing that you started arguing about. You've kind of it's like it starts out being about a specific thing, and then it blows up into all of this sort of nonsense and this noise around the core concept. And you kind of get confused about what you're actually discussing, what you're actually arguing about. And I think that happens back in terms of the religious debate as well, as you start to debate the sort of surface level issues rather than having conversations about rather than giving people the grace to or the benefit of the doubt, and instead of straw manning somebody's arguments, it would be better to strongman them, right? Like trying to have an argument or a debate based on the best concept of an idea, so that we're not just talking about, is there a man in the sky? It's like, what a silly way of defining Christianity, for example. Like people start to debate, like you say, they debate the sort of like the silliest version of religion or the silliest version of whatever it might be, instead of actually having an intelligent and honest and open-minded conversation about the highest purpose, the highest concept of whatever, or of that idea, highest version of that idea. I knew a man that worked for a funeral parlor. He picked up bodies of people who he knew were Christians, had such a peaceful expression on their face, but ones that weren't believers had an expression of horror. Yeah. And there's lots of different ways of interpreting that as well. We see the world through our belief structure. We see the world through, I'm not sure if you guys were in the live already when I first talked about this, but We see the world through a filter. Our brain has a filter called the reticular activating system, the RAS. And that filter is programmed by our subconscious. And so we actually are only seeing the things in our lives and they're in reality in accordance to our belief system. And so if your belief system is very, very strong, you have a very strong filter, then you will go through life seeing things that support that belief system, and you will ignore other things that take away from it, right? That argue against your belief system. And that's why it's so important to understand that concept, because if you're going through life and bumping up against the same problems all the time, then it's worthwhile having a think about what is going on within you, what's wrong within your filter that needs to change so that you're no longer experiencing these problems, because we don't experience the world, we experience the world that we focus on. And we need to learn to adjust our filter, our focus, if we're not experiencing the world in a way that is, what would you say, joyful, or in a way that we enjoy and appreciate. Every religion I've come across has some of the same core ideas, so it's interesting that we do make ourselves so separate. Yeah, and that's your filter. It gives you tunnel vision. Yeah. Well, we all have this, right, Gary? We all have tunnel vision, and there you have to understand that the brain receives. I'm going to mix up the data now on this because it's been a while, but it's something. No, I'm not even going to. It's a certain million number of bits of information a second, and we're not able to comprehend that kind of information. So we filter out the overwhelming majority of the information that we see, that comes into our brains, and we only become consciously aware of a very, very small portion of that information. And that the information that we are aware of is the information that we are essentially trained to spot. That's that filter, right? And so your brain literally ignores information that it determines is not important to you, and it determines what's not important to you based on your belief system, the way that you are programmed and raised. And so that's why it's so important as adults to realize that actually we're not experiencing life, we're experiencing life through this filter. And if we want to change the quality of our life, the success we're experiencing, the joy that we're experiencing, then we need to work on that filter, because the opportunities are around us all of the time. It's like, this is a really common example, but it's really useful. If you're wanting to buy a car, for example, let's say you have your eye on a yellow, whatever, a specific type of car, right? Let's say it's yellow. All of a sudden, when you're looking to buy this car, you'll start noticing that car everywhere you go. And the reason for that is because you have determined, your brain understands that this is something that's important to you. And so it's pointing those things out. And we can do the same for whatever it is. So if you are somebody, for example, who maybe don't have a lot of friends, if you start to think about, okay, I want to be more social, I want to prioritize my friendships, I want to have a certain type of interaction with people. When you repeatedly focus on that, you will start to notice opportunities for those experiences. And this is why I'm so passionate about psychology and neuroscience and mindset work, is because we can literally change the experience, the actual physical experience that we're having in life, based on the way that our mind is working and based on the thoughts that we tell ourselves. And most people go through life not doing this consciously. They do this unconsciously, and then they are focusing on the wrong things. Yeah, great, Gary, great. I'm glad you're taking something from it. And likewise, being for me also being interacting with somebody who has, for example, more of a stronger take on religion, or more of a belief in a defined religion, is always interesting for me as well, and gives me insights into how you're experiencing the world and what's valuable for you, and how that's useful to you, rather than for me to just dismiss something that I don't understand. And I try to get better at that, not just dismissing something because it doesn't align with my understanding of the world. Because, like I said, I've been very ignorant in the past, and it's caused me a lot of pain. And I realized it's much better to be more open-minded and to listen to what other people have experienced and to see what is of value within their experience and how I can also incorporate some of those lessons into my own life, because we learn from each other, and there's always something to learn from another person if you listen well enough. Problem is that most of the time we're not listening. Beck, my thought is that we are looking at the world through different colored glasses. Some people can take them off to see all colors, some can't. Yeah, great analogy. Absolutely. We all see the world through a different perspective. Every one of us. There is no one unified reality. It's all, everybody lives in their own little bubble, their own version of reality. And some people are better at seeing different versions of reality, or at least recognizing that they are seeing it through a certain lens, a certain biased or skewed perspective. And then other people just think that their perception and view on the world is the only way, is the right way. And those are the people that end up getting in trouble with bumping up against different views of the world and end up in a whole lot of pain a lot of the time, because they thought they understood something, and then it turns out that their understanding wasn't best suited and didn't produce the best results for them. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We are all looking through different colored glasses. We all see a slightly different version of the world. It is something you can work on intellectually. Everything that... It's so funny because I say this and I always cringe a little bit, because it's one of these cliche things in the coaching space and religion and spirituality, but awareness. Everything starts from a place of awareness, of being consciously aware of... We can't necessarily know what we don't know, but we can at least consciously be aware that we don't know, right? So we can be aware of our unknowing, and to change anything in life, or to learn anything in life, and no, that's not true. To change anything in life intentionally, it has to start from a place of awareness, of knowing that there is something there to be changed in the first place. Got to go now. All right, Gary, appreciate you being on the live, mate. And yeah, hope to see you next time. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Really helps the small channel grow. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. When will I stream again? At the moment, they're a bit ad hoc, so I can't say for sure, unfortunately. But if you do subscribe, then I think you'll get a notification about it. And I'll probably start to do these on a more organized, scheduled basis. But at the moment, it's kind of in between some of the other work that I have to get done. So unfortunately, I can't give you a clear answer on that right now. Are you looking at study for psychology or neuroscience? I've learned from neuroscience, psychology, a little bit of biology or neurobiology, some spirituality, lived experience, some different coaching practices, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. So come at it from sorry, there's a lot of background noise, and hopefully that's not audible to you. I come at it from, hiya Billa Whitey. I come at it from a range of a range of perspectives, or try to, because like you were saying with religion, right? That religion, the different religions all talk about the same sort of concepts, just using different terminology, slightly different perspectives, but it's kind of fundamentally about the same ideas. A lot of what happens in terms of our own experience, the way that human behavior, you can describe it from a psychological perspective, you can describe it from a spiritual, religious perspective, and using that kind of terminology. You can look at it from a biological or neuroscience backed perspective. But what we're getting at is really the same thing. It's like the same core ideas of what it means to be human, what it means to experience the world, to experience life, and different philosophies, schools of thoughts use different words or different methods to improve our experience, but ultimately they're all aimed at the same thing and they all describe the same thing just from a slightly different perspective. And so, yeah, I'm really interested in, I started out primarily in psychology and learning a lot from a psychological perspective, but more and more I've been focused on neuroscience, and there are a couple of other primary ways in there. And then, like, when it comes to sort of practical tools, the tools that I use to help my clients really change how they're experiencing, change their belief system, change their identity, change how they're behaving in their relationships and their businesses, then I lean quite heavily on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, ways of making changes at the neurological level and at the subconscious level. That's kind of where I come at it from. So there's like these core mechanisms in our brain that we can adjust, and there are some really powerful tools for doing that. And then there's also these stories, these concepts, this more broader knowledge that encapsulates those methods and gives us more of a because we understand the world through stories, it gives us more of a context to operate from. My degree in psychology, but my specialty is child development. Okay, cool. I mean, that's a fascinating field of study as well. And certainly, if you're actually working, if you're working with children and seeing them develop, that's a really that must be a lot of fun, because that's really where you get to see just how. Because as adults, we're a lot more, well, as you know, we're a lot more sort of fixed in our behaviors because we have these kind of predetermined routes, not predetermined, but prefabricated routes from our childhood. And it can take a little, the changes are often not so drastic, but when you're looking at children, you really see them change, like psychological on a deep level, massively. It's fascinating. How do you know religion is the word from Latin root religere? I did not. What does that mean? What does the Latin root religere mean? I'm curious. Yeah, Latin's one of those things I never studied in school or anywhere else. But yeah, no, I think it's now more than ever when we're dealing with all of these. If we talk about AI, for example, as being this really powerful, intelligent tool that we can use, I think it becomes more and more important and necessary for us to understand how our own minds work, because when we understand that, we're better equipped to it's like better equipped to use these tools, and when intelligence is no longer the bottleneck, we become the bottleneck. Our own behaviors, our own identities, and our limiting beliefs, and our self-sabotaging behaviors, those sorts of things. We become the real bottleneck for success and fulfillment in our lives. And the way that we get that success and fulfillment in life, when all of the tools are available to us, which they are, is that we start to work on our own internal experience, our own mental wiring, programming, whatever you want to call it, and look at ways to, there are powerful ways of creating more positive emotion in your life that don't rely on drugs or, going to therapy for years and years. How do you manufacture meaning, for example, in your life? These are things that are possible to us. Because our brains are amazing pieces of technology themselves, but we need to understand how to harness them. Beck, oh, you're Australian. I'm New Zealander, Kiwi. Stories is actually a big part of the Indigenous culture. Yeah, exactly. So stories, I mean, that up until fairly recently, and when we talk about fairly recently, I suppose we're talking about the last couple of thousand years of human history. But up until fairly recently, story was the way that we passed on information. Story was the way that we survived, essentially, right? That's how we evolved and grew, and our mind is this. If you take nothing away, if you don't know this already, but probably you do, but if you take nothing away from this conversation today, is that understanding that our mind, our thoughts, our beliefs, our identity are nothing more than a set of stories that we play on repeat, that we reinforce. They are stories. The great thing about stories is they can be rewritten, they can be edited. And when we edit the stories and rewrite the stories that we have programmed in our minds, then our personality changes, our emotional states change, right? You go from being somebody who is potentially anxious, introverted, not socially adept, to somebody who's confident, likes to put themselves out there, likes to take risks, all of these things. And you can change that. And that happens as a natural consequence of changing what's happening internally. These sort of base programs of our human mind. Even going back to things like Norse mythology. Yeah, it's all stories. It's all stories. So, and there's the conscious stories, of course, things like mythology and things. Although there's real meaning baked into those stories, of course, as you know. But there's also the unconscious stories, the beliefs that we have about ourselves that we never even think to question. We just think, oh, that's just me, or we don't even think that even that, right? We just are. We just think I am this person, and there's a set of assumptions about who that person is, but you never end up. Most people don't ever question those assumptions about who that person is, and don't even think about the fact that they could change those assumptions. They could rewire and rewrite those stories, and then that person that you are right now can be so much more. Could be so much more if you have the awareness to question those base assumptions, to work on your identity, that sort of thing. The inner monologue of sorts, yes, so that's part of it. So there's the inner monologue that we become more consciously aware of when we think about it. That's a big place to start, because that's kind of the base place to start, really. The challenge with the inner monologue is there's varying levels of awareness about it, and so no doubt you've experienced it. You're sitting at home or in a certain social situation, and you're thinking something to yourself, and you're very aware of what you're thinking. The trickier bit is it's hard to describe, because the problem with unconscious thoughts is they are unconscious and they're harder to become aware of. But there are also this monologue within your mind that you're not usually conscious of, you're not usually aware that it's happening, but it's there, and you'll know that it's there when you start to practice this awareness and start to question it, like to pay attention to it. About it might be something about yourself. Throughout your day, you're not necessarily consciously thinking, I'm unfit, or I'm unwell, or I'm not a confident person, or whatever it is. But there will be times, if you pay attention and start to practice that awareness, where you might catch yourself thinking those sorts of thoughts, and you can kind of like go, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that was something that was running in the background. And those are the ones to try and catch and to change. And they're harder to do by yourself, because the problem with trying to do it by yourself is you don't really know what to look for. So a big part of what helps my clients make the changes is that I'm there to ask them questions. If you have somebody who pays attention and asks you questions in the right way, they will be able to see where where your blind spots are, right? They'll be able to kind of notice on your behalf what you're not paying attention to, and then through appropriate questioning, if they're good, get you to bring that to the surface, to acknowledge that in yourself. And when you acknowledge that in yourself, what can happen is you can make these really massive changes at the fundamental level, at the foundational level. And that change will result in massive behavioral changes. And that's really cool to see. So I have this, for example, another client of mine. In his relationship, he was really struggling in his relationship, and him and his partner had basically gone on a break. She had gone overseas to kind of take a break, and he called me up, and he was like, we arranged a call, and he was like, I think the relationship's done. I think we're just there's nothing here anymore. There's too many incompatibilities. There was a whole bunch of these stories that he was telling himself about the relationship. Now, through the conversation, the session with me, he was able to make, and I can't pinpoint exactly what because it was within his own experience, but he was able to change at a foundational level how he was seeing himself, how he was seeing the relationship and his partner. And he was able to basically make this, it was almost like a switch in his head, because he brought to his awareness a certain way of thinking, and because he was aware of it, he then at that moment changed the awareness, changed the concept that he had in his head about his role in the relationship, what conflict meant for him in the relationship, what a healthy relationship looked like, what his partner, the motives behind his partner's actions, these sorts of things. Now, as a result of making that switch, 2 weeks after that session, he messaged me and he was like, look, man, my relationship's the best it's ever been. He literally said that my relationship is the best it's ever been. I feel so much better and more capable and more grounded in himself and in the relationship. And 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, they got married. About a month and a half after our session. A month and a half after feeling like the relationship was done, there was no way forward, there was no path forward. He went from there to relationship is the best it's ever been to we're committing to each other, we're making this work. And that's not to say that there's no longer any sort of problems to fix. Like I'm not a magician. There's always work to be done. But that fundamental change led him to being in a state and to change the story about himself and the relationship in a way that allowed him to continue in a way and experience the joy of the relationship. It wasn't like he just decided to put up with it. It's that he literally started to experience the relationship in a different way, in a way that was more enjoyable, more full of love, and with a common direction. So very cool to see, very cool to experience. You've been made aware recently that you tend to rehearse conversations and try and predict the other person's response. That I miss the nuance of the actual conversation when it happens. Ooh, that's a good one, and I have to tell you, I am as guilty of that as you. Yeah, that's actually a very common. It's a very common trait that a lot of people have, and you're right. It will lead to missing the nuance of the conversation. You essentially are projecting your idea onto the conversation, onto the other person's words, and this is exactly. I mean, you see this online all the time in comments and stuff, that people are projecting their own understanding onto what somebody has said or written, and then getting angry at that. It's really funny to watch once you have this awareness, because you're like, that wasn't at all what the meaning behind that message was. But this person's clearly taken their frame of reference, taken their perception, right? The story, these glasses, their rose-colored glasses or their different colored glasses, and they have projected that onto another person's reality and then onto another person's words. And we all do this to a certain extent. It's great that you've been made aware of this, because now that you have the awareness, now you can practice being curious and being attentive. You can. I have to, like, I'm not trying to preach here, because I have to do the same thing for myself. That I do the same thing, and this is a dangerous thing in relationships, because often we'll have a thought about our partner, and then we'll start arguing with our partner in our head and running through the argument back and forth. It's like, well, if I say this, she just says that, then I'm going to say this, and then she's going to say that, and blah, 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 right? And we get into this like agitated, angry state, and then we get into an interaction with our partner, and regardless of whether they say these things or not, we project that understanding onto them, and then that's what we're seeing. That's that act of training your filter, right? Training your reticular activating system, is that you are literally creating that reality for you, because even if there is evidence that is counter to the story that you've run in your head, the scenario that you've run in your head, because you've practiced it and that's what you're looking out for, that is the evidence that you start to collect. You're like, this is how it's gonna go, and now you're gonna find evidence that supports that belief, that supports that story, and that gets you in a lot of trouble. So, and I used to be 100% like that, and it got me into a lot of trouble, especially in my relationship. In fact, that was the reason that my relationship ended multiple times. Luckily, I've gotten better at it, and now I'm able to be present and to be more curious and open-minded and pay attention to what my partner is actually saying, rather than just what I think they're saying or what I think they're meaning. Yeah, difficult in relationships, especially in new ones. I feel like I have probably tried to predict based on the behavior of past partners. Yeah, that's again something that it's so easy to do. And I think, one of the things I would say is to first recognize that this is not something that you are so bad at or for doing, because we all do this, and we all do this to varying extents. Some people don't have the awareness that they're ever doing that. They never realize that that's the case. And then some people, like yourself, have realized that you do this, and now you have that awareness. Now you can start to change it. But it's a real practice to go through life living from the present experiences and not the past experiences. But what often happens, and this is what trauma is that you have a bad experience in the past, and then you're hyperfixated you're looking out for when that experience is going to happen again. But because you're looking out for it, you're finding evidence even where in places that it's not. And so you end up getting to situations, for example, in new relationships, where you're sabotaging the relationship by projecting a past experience onto the present relationship. And when you're aware of that, when you start to become aware that you're operating not from the place of the present, you're not reacting to your current partner, but you're reacting to your previous partner, that can be a really useful understanding. I have this with my partner as well, because she's got some stuff. Well, we've all got some stuff, right? But there are a couple of situations where I recognize that she does this very strongly, and in the past it used to drive me mental. Because she was overreact, in my view, right? She was overreacting to something that was just not an issue. But what I learned was that she wasn't, in those situations, she wasn't reacting to me. She wasn't seeing me. She was seeing, in this case, it was her father. She was responding to her father in that case. and all of the emotional, the anger and the fear and all those sorts of things, I didn't need to be concerned about in terms, I didn't need to take it personally. I didn't need to be defensive about it because it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at her father. And she just thought that in that moment, right, she just was projecting it onto me, but it wasn't about me. So that can be really useful to what do you say? Yeah, to let go of some of the things. And in fact, this is what everybody does: is we project onto others our own insecurities, our own past traumas, our past experiences. And when you realize that everybody's doing that, it gives us a little more patience and a little more grace that we can give to the other person, because we know that, hey, this is not about me in this moment. This is not, I haven't done something fundamentally wrong here. I mean, maybe you have, but a lot of the time you haven't. It's just that somebody else is seeing the world through their past emotional pain, and they're projecting it onto you in the present. And when we can recognize that, then we can be there for them, and be there in the way that they need, rather than feeling attacked and making it about us. I would say that's the kind of like the highest aim to get to, but it's not. I'm not by no means saying that it's easy. Simple, but it's not easy. But yeah, if you're getting into relationships and you find yourself repeatedly getting into the same relationship with different people, that's a sign that there's some story going on within you that needs to be analyzed and rewritten or modified. Because I love the saying is, if everybody you meet is an asshole, if everybody you meet is an asshole, then they're not the asshole, you are. And I think it's a great, it makes a great point, which is the world that we experience is a reflection of us. It literally is a reflection of us. It's a reflection of the filter that we have, because we're noticing only the things that we have trained ourselves or have been trained into us through our childhood and things like that, to notice. And not only that, there was another concept that I was going to mention. Oh, yeah. The other one is that in order to notice something, there has to be a part of you that shares that. In order to notice something, there has to be that something within you somewhere and in some quantity. So why I find that useful is that if somebody is being really nasty in some way and you notice it, the likelihood that there is that capability within you to be that nasty is very, very likely, because you wouldn't have otherwise been able to spot it. You wouldn't have been able to notice it. And when we can recognize that, and again, this is one of those useful stories, then it allows us to be more forgiving towards others, towards ourselves as well. And again, that's really interested in helping people to find the things that are useful, the philosophies, the tools, the stories that are useful, that help create the results in the life that we want. And if you guys haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. I do create actual recorded content that will help go into these kinds of details in a more structured format, and give you some tools and methods for rewiring your brain and for producing more success and joy in your life. Also, if you, I actually have a community, an online community for. It's primarily for entrepreneurs, founders, business owners who want to experience more success, fulfillment, both in their relationships and in their business. And their link to that is also, it's free to join. The link to that is in my channel description. You can go and join up, and that's where I can also help you in a more hands-on, intimate format. Jump on sort of different webinars, masterclasses, Q&As. There are tools, different templates and strategies that you can use. Oh, awesome. Cheers, Beck. I appreciate you subscribing. So you're not dating. My experience has been that I don't have enough time to nurture something between kids and work. I'd love to, but it's not for me just yet. Right. So you feel like you don't have the capacity at the moment. This is it something that you would ultimately that you would actually like if you had the capacity, or is it something that you don't really want at the moment? I understand that you've said that it's not something that you feel that you could nurture between your kids and your work. Fair enough, kids are a lot of work, but there must be a belief in there that a relationship is an added burden rather than something that could provide you with more energy and more capacity rather than less. That might be also worthwhile delving into, but only if it's something that you actually want. I guess I say that again because I'm projecting my experience onto you. Right? I like to share my own experience because I think I've made a lot of mistakes, and I like to share the ones that are the lessons I've learned from it, because I think for some people, maybe for you, it can be helpful. I used to feel that way about my relationship. So I've been with the same partner for 10 years, but we've broken up and got back together, and broken up, got back together. And I used to feel that the relationship was a burden, that it was something that was getting in the way of my business goals, of my desire for more growth, more success. And this was also a story that I was telling myself, right? That the relationship was not serving me, that it was that it was a drain on my energy. Now, it turns out, and I found this out by when I was single, when I ended the relationship, that my capacity for work didn't go up. My capacity for work actually dropped, and I got severely depressed, suicidal. I just didn't want to be around anymore. I didn't feel motivated to do anything, because I wasn't. It turned out that the relationship that I had been in, I had been telling myself a certain story about what it meant, and again, what my partner was doing, and my interpretation of that. And I felt fully justified in that. I had plenty of evidence to support that story. But when I ended the relationship, what happened was that I went downhill even more. And what I learned was that my partner wasn't the one that was getting in the way. My partner was, in fact, at that time, the only thing that was keeping me afloat. And when I got rid of the relationship, I just sunk to the bottom. And so it's funny how these stories they contain real power. Of course, I would like to. However, I feel like I want the next relationship to be my last relationship. So I owe it to myself and whoever I'm with to be able to nurture it. Yeah, totally. You want to be able to be present. Let me just think about that for a moment. You want to be able to nurture. I guess the question I would ask you is, what would need to change in your life for you to feel like you have the capability, the capacity to nurture a relationship? if now is not right, if now there's too much going on, how will you know when you do have that capacity? And what happens? I mean, this is difficult. This kind of thing. It'd be great to get into a sort of a back and forth conversation. Obviously, it's a little tricky with you texting and I'm here talking. But if you join my community, which I highly recommend you do, it's a great place. The link again is in my description, channel description. If you join that, then there's an opportunity there to jump on a call with me, completely free, as well as some other masterclasses and live events that we'll be having, or that we do have, where we can have more of a back and forth. But it would be interesting because at the moment you feel like you can't have the relationship and be looking after your kids and your work at the same time. And I'm not saying, by the way, that that's not true. That might very well be the case. But there is the potential to be putting yourself into a box or to be limiting yourself, where maybe there is a way that, and again, this will be the kind of process I would normally elicit from you in a call, but seeing as we don't have that dynamic here, I'll just share my thoughts on it. Is that there may be a way, if that was the goal, where you could have the relationship and have that intimacy and have the love, and it to be, sorry, there's honking horns, and for that relationship not only to be not a drain, but actually be supporting you in, for example, looking after your kids, in being motivated and driven towards your work and your career. And I'm not saying whether that is true or not. All I'm doing is wanting to present you with the opportunity, or the idea that could be the case for you, that could be the possibility for you. And what I found, for example, in my relationship, now that I'm back again with the same partner, is that I'm way more driven to build a future for the both of us than I was trying to build a future just for me. And this is part of what we were talking about a little bit at the beginning with regards to spirituality and religion, which is when we are doing things for more than ourselves, and you've got your children as well, so that is obviously already a very big motivator, and something that I'm also looking forward to having myself when me and my partner my fiance have kids, because my generation, I'm not sure how old you are, but my generation and some of the younger generations see responsibility and see children, for example, as something that gets in the way of life, gets in the way of achieving success. Whereas the people that I've spoken to that have children, they are, and maybe you can resonate, I'd love to hear your feedback on this, they are way more motivated, way more driven to achieve financial success, they have way more purpose, meaning, joy in their life because of the fact that they have kids, not despite of it, and not in spite of it. So that could also be the case for you in terms of having a relationship. Maybe it's not. I'm not here to place a judgment on that, but I just know from my own experience and from the experience of working with the clients that I do, is that we all put these limitations on ourselves of thinking, I can only have this one or this one, right? It's A or B, rather than saying A and B at the same time, and A and B actually helps us get C. You're 31, okay. I don't know what would have to change specifically. I just seem to run out of time. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I mean, obviously this is not a mum of two. Oh yeah. Sorry, for some reason I had it in my head that you're a male. Forgive me. You're a mum of two. Yeah, and look, it's one of these things where when we look at it from a perspective of like what has to happen in terms of actual living situation, it can be very tricky, because it can feel like no matter what you change, no matter what you tweak in your life, it's not going to change how you feel, because you'll still feel like whatever you add to your plate, it's going to be an addition, and you don't have the capacity for that. What I would say is that when you look at what's going on inside of yourself and looking at what are the beliefs underlying, what is the belief about yourself that tells you you don't have the capacity for more, right? Because once you change the belief around your capacity, when you change the belief around your capacity, around your own capability, around what it would mean to have somebody in your life, because at the moment and potentially rightfully so, you feel like, okay, if I have a partner, I want to be able to devote time and energy to them, but then they're going to take away from my children. And there's this belief that the energy that you have is finite, and it has to be split between either your kids and your work, or your kids and your work and this partner, and there's just not enough to be able to go around. But what if that wasn't the case? What if you had way more energy, way more capacity, way more capability than you currently have, and that you had more than enough to have all of that? And in fact, having all of that, having a partner, gives you even more energy rather than it being something that kind of is a drain. Not saying that it would be, just putting it out there as an idea. Because we self-limitate all the time. I used to tell myself that I couldn't be happy until, now this is a different example, so forgive the slight jump, but I used to tell myself I could not be happy until I had achieved a certain level of success. And for me, this was a perfectly logical and rational judgment. I was like, well, if I'm happy and content or in a good emotional state, then I won't be driven and motivated to achieve success. Now, it turned out that was a really poor belief to have, because it drove me to depression and nearly taking my own life, and destroying my relationship and things like this. But and what I found out afterwards is that by changing the belief that I can be in a really great state mentally and emotionally, I can be enjoying my life, enjoying who I am, love myself, have the energy, and be hyper driven to achieve what I want in life, and and because of being in a relationship, for example, the relationship is a supporting factor of that endeavor, rather than being something that distracts or takes away. Of course, there's different challenges, there's things that need to be negotiated and practicalities that need to be put in place for that to work, but it fundamentally starts at a belief level. What do you believe is possible? And all I'm encouraging is for you to question whether the current beliefs that you have are absolutely true, and that there aren't any other possibilities. That's all. And yes, I'm very much motivated for them. The old tale, I want my children to have what I didn't. Yeah, exactly. It's I wonder, it just, maybe you can answer this. When you didn't have children, what was your, did you feel like children were something that was kind of going to get in the way of your career, or be somehow be a detractor in your life rather than an amplifier? I'm curious whether you had a belief around what having children would mean, versus how you feel about it now, and if there was a change or not. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. But yeah, it's there's all of these different things that we need to figure out in our lives. But I think when we focus on what sits at the base of all of it, our fundamental underlying beliefs. This is why my company and my methodology is called Foundamental, because it is about the foundations at a mental, emotional level that determine everything else in our life. But when we get those things right, then it expands. It literally expands the range of choices that we have. It expands our capability in life, and opens us up for so much more success, fulfillment, and joy. You wanted to have a few. Oh, okay, nice. I could only physically have two, but I wanted to have a soccer team. Nice. That's cool. I mean, shame that you couldn't have more, but two's pretty good too. Very, very cool. I'm looking forward to having my own children. My fiance and I are working towards that. But yeah, and I also, so I'm the opposite to you. I did think that children would be a detractor, something to get in the way, but I now believe that they are a big part of the purpose of life, and a reason to do one of the greatest reasons for doing what we do in the first place. Everybody's so focused on getting established and earning money in life, but children are why we do all of that in the first place. So, but there was a life in trauma and relationships ending, and it all changed. I see two boys. Oh yeah, you got your work cut out for you there. Yeah. My mum. I'm a twin. I got a brother, not identical, but my mum raised us from the ages of 0 to about 7 with no help except for my grandparents. So yeah, I know that she had her work cut out for her as well. It's not an easy job, but I'm sure you're doing a wonderful job at it nonetheless. Right, I am going to end this live now. It's been an hour and a half, and I've got to get going. I think this cafe closes very soon. But thank you so much for being part of it. It's been lovely having this back and forth and hearing a bit more about your experience, Beck. And yeah, wish you all the best with your children. And if you haven't already, I think you did say you already subscribed. And if you want to join that community, I'd love to have you there. And yeah, hope to see you in another live sometime soon. And if you need any sort of help or want to delve into maybe some of those beliefs in more detail, then by all means, there's also the opportunity to book a call, also for free on my using the link in my channel bio. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you around. All right, Beck. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.